Hi there. So, having finished Ayakema's book last night, I'm going to give Buddhism a break for a couple days. I have another book of hers that I need to read before the retreat I'm going on, which is one of the reasons that I am reading all this Buddhism right now, is that I'm doing another silent retreat at the end of this month. Um, but right now, I am doing a Taoist retreat this weekend, a Qigong retreat that's all about unconditional love. But Buddhism basically believes that everything in existence is an illusion, and that true happiness lies when you release yourself from all of this delusion and suffering. And Mahayana Buddhism thinks you should stay around and help all the other people who are delusional get out of their traps. But Theravada just believes you should get the fuck out of here, because the only thing you're ever going to encounter here is suffering, and you should just get out of the boat. And if everybody gets out of the boat, there'll be no more boat, and then the game will be over, and we'll get out of here. Who decided samsara was a good idea anyway? Us. Taoism, however, believes in this world and loves nature, and its trip is much more about learning immortality so that you can stay healthy forever. And in making you healthy, you make other people healthy, and you make the earth healthy. So Taoism's like a path of healing and wholeness, whereas Buddhism is more of a path of renunciation. Now, Buddhism, especially Mahayana Buddhism, and I would say more Mahayana Buddhism has, and I don't know all the paths of Buddhism, but Buddhism has a lot more of like, there are people who are enlightened that will be happy to help, because everybody needs help, and you can be one of those enlightened people that stick around and help all of the lost delusional souls here. Though I'm not entirely certain that everybody who comes here is lost and delusional. I think some people just want a good popsicle or fancy car. They just want the experience of being like, stuff's cool. But tonight, I'm going to read to you from some Taoist stuff, just the Tao Te Ching, which I love, and a lot of people haven't read the Tao Te Ching. And this isn't my favorite. This is not my favorite translation. I like when they use the older classic, like the Stephen Mitchell translation, which is the first one I read, or the classical, like the 10,000 Things. This one's a little more updated, but maybe that'll be good for you. I'm just going to read a couple of them, or maybe 4, or maybe 3. They're really like mind-bending if you want to meditate on them, but I'm just going to read a few of them. Then I'm going to read some Rumi, and then just some lyrics of a pop song, because that's where I've gotten most of the Dhamma in my life, and that's not a good idea. But it's more about just keeping up the habit of making videos for my birthday. The Tao Te Ching. 1. Tao, the subtle reality of the universe, cannot be described. That which can be described in words is merely a conception of the mind. Although names and descriptions have been applied to it, the subtle reality is beyond description. One may use the word nothingness to describe the origin of the universe, and beingness to describe the mother of the myriad things. But nothingness and beingness are merely conceptions. From the perspective of nothingness, one may perceive the expansion of the universe. From the perspective of beingness, one may distinguish individual things. Both are for the conceptual convenience of the mind. Although different concepts can be applied, nothingness and beingness, and other conceptual activity of the mind, all come from the same indescribable subtle originalness. The way is the unfoldment of such subtle reality. Having reached the subtlety of the universe, one may see the ultimate subtlety, the gate of all wonders. 2. As soon as the world regards something as beautiful, ugliness simultaneously becomes apparent. As soon as the world regards something as good, evil simultaneously becomes apparent. In exactly the same manner, Existence and nothingness give birth to each other. Difficult and easy define each other. Long and short form each other. High and low make each other distinguishable. Silence and sound make each other conspicuous. Front and back connect each other. Realizing this, one does not separate one's being from the subtle essence of the universe. One holds no preconceptions and does things without insisting on personal conditions. One guides people by living in accord with the essence of life. One brings good things about, but has no intention of possessing them. One performs work, but has no intention to acquire personal power. When one's task is accomplished, one lets go of it and seeks no reward or recognition. Because one does not claim credit for oneself, one does not do any damage to oneself. When the three. When the superior are not exalted, envy will not be aroused. Then there will be no rivalry or contention among people. When wealth is not treasured, desire for possessions will not be stirred up. Then people will not be tempted to rob one another. By shutting that which is desirable out of sight, the heart will remain undisturbed. Then there will be no confusion in the hearts of people. The guidance of the Universal One, a natural wholeness, is therefore empty your mind. Enjoy good health. Weaken your ambitions. Strengthen your essence. When people are free from cunning, desire, and artifice, everything will be well ordered of its own accord. 4. The subtle way of the universe appears to lack strength, yet its power is inexhaustible. Fathomless, it could be the origin of all things. It has no sharpness, yet it rounds off all sharp edges. It has no form, yet it unties all tangles. It has no glare, yet it merges all lights. It harmonizes all things and unites them as one integral whole. It seems so obscure, yet it is the ultimate clarity, whose offspring it is can never be known. Whose offspring it is can never be known. It is that which existed before any divinity. 5. The subtle virtue of the universe is wholeness. It regards all things as equal. The virtue of the sage is wholeness. He too regards all things as equal. The universe may be compared to a bellows. It is empty, yet it never fails to generate its products. The more it moves, the more it brings forth. Many words lead one nowhere. Many pursuits in different directions bring only exhaustion. Rather, embrace the subtle essence within. 6. The subtle essence of the universe is active. It is like an unfailing fountain of life, which flows forever in a vast and profound valley. It is called the primal female and the subtle origin. The gate of the subtle origin becomes the root of the universe. It subtly and gently generates without exhausting itself. So I read the Ching, the whole thing, when I was 14 or 15 or something, and made up Qigong for years after that. Just, it's really, there's a million translations of it, and I highly recommend getting it and reading it. And just, like, even those things, I don't know how you felt about it, but even just me reading it, I'm like, wow, that's so fucking brilliant. But that's me. I like the Tao a lot. Buddhism always makes me feel, I mean, like the Bible, Buddhism and the Bible make me feel judged and shameful and bad all the time. And it makes me sad and makes me feel bad for the rest of humanity. Like, it's just, it's, I don't know. I want to balance out the austerity of the Buddhist stuff I've been reading by reading some Rumi, and I just opened it to one of the many bookmarks I have in this Essential Rumi by Coleman Barks, which is lovely, and everybody has probably encountered this, or you should. But this is a chapter that's just raunchy, called Rough Metaphors, More Teaching Stories. And I may read the whole thing, or I may tire of it. It's like 10 pages. But I will read Coleman's introduction on roughness. Some of Rumi's metaphors are rough, raw, and unacceptable to refined tastes. When Reynold Nichols translated the Mahawani into English in the 1920s, he chose to render some of the passages into Latin, supposing that anyone who knew enough Latin to read them would be properly shielded from taint. Rumi uses anything human beings do, no matter how scandalous or cruel or silly, as a lens to examine soul growth. A gourd crafted to serve as a flange, allowing a donkey's penis to enter a woman's vagina just to the point of her pleasure, but not far enough to harm her, becomes a metaphor for a device a sheik might use to put limits on a disciple. After another graphic, outrageously elaborated comparison of bread making with love making, he concludes, "Remember, the way you make love is the way God will be with you." For Rumi, the bread of every experience offers nourishment. Rough metaphors. Someone said, "There is no dervish, or if there is a dervish, that dervish is not there. Look at that candle flame in the bright noon sunlight. If you put cotton next to it, the cotton will burn, but its light has become completely mixed with the sun. That candlelight you can't find is what's left of a dervish. If you sprinkle 1 ounce of vinegar over 200 tons of sugar, no one will ever taste the vinegar. A deer faints in the paws of a lion. The deer becomes another glazed expression on the face of the lion." These are rough metaphors for what happens to the lover. There's no one more openly irreverent than a lover. He or she jumps up on the scale opposite eternity and claims to balance it. And no one more secretly reverent. A grammar lesson. The lover died. Lover is subject and agent. But that can't be. The lover is defunct. Only grammatically is the dervish lover a doer. In reality, with he or she so overcome, so dissolved into love, all qualities of doingness disappear. Bird wings. Your grief for what you've lost lifts a mirror up to where you're bravely working. Expecting the worst, you look. And instead, here's the joyful face you've been wanting to see. Your hand opens and closes, and opens and closes. If it were always a fist or always stretched open, you would be paralyzed. Your deepest presence is in every small contracting and expanding. The two is beautifully balanced and coordinated as bird wings. I come before dawn. Muhammad says, I come before dawn to chain you and drag you off. It's amazing and funny that you have to be pulled away from being tortured, pulled out into the spring garden. But that's the way it is. Almost everyone must be bound and dragged here. Only a few come on their own. Children have to be made to go to school at first. Then some of them begin to like it. They run to school. They expand with the learning. Later they receive money because of something they've learned at school, and they get really excited. They stay up all night, as watchful and alive as thieves. Remember the rewards you get for being obedient? There are two types on the path. Those who come against their will, the blindly religious people, and those who obey out of love. The former have ulterior motives. They want the midwife near because she gives them milk. The others love the beauty of the nurse. The former memorize the proof texts of conformity and repeat them. The latter disappear into whatever draws them to God. Both are drawn from the source. Any movings from the mover, any love from the beloved. Checkmate. Borrow the beloved's eyes. Look through them and you'll see the beloved's face. Borrow the beloved's eyes. Look through them and you'll see the beloved's face everywhere. No tiredness, no jaded boredom. I shall be your eye and your hand and your loving. Let that happen, and things you have hated will become helpers. A certain preacher always prays long and with enthusiasm for thieves and muggers that attack people on the street. Let your mercy, O Lord, cover their insolence. He doesn't pray for the good, but only for the blatantly cruel. Why is this? His congregation asks. Because they have done me such generous favors. Every time I turn back toward the things they want, I run into them. They beat me and leave me nearly dead in the road, and I understand again that what they want is not what I want. They keep me on the spiritual path. That's why I honor them and pray for them. Those that make you return, for whatever reason, to God's solitude, be grateful to them. Worry about the others who give you delicious comforts that keep you from prayer. Friends are enemies sometimes, and enemies friends. There's an animal called an ushugur, a porcupine. If you hit it with a stick, it extends its quills and gets bigger. The soul is a porcupine, made strong by stick beating. So a prophet's soul is especially afflicted because it has to become so powerful. A hide is soaked in tanning liquor and becomes leather. If the tanner did not rub in the acid, the hide would get foul-smelling and rotten. The soul is a newly skinned hide, bloody and gross. Work on it with manual discipline and the bitter tanning acid of grief, and you'll become lovely and very strong. If you can't do this work yourself, don't worry. You don't even have to make a decision one way or another. The friend, who knows a lot more than you do, will bring difficulties and grief and sickness as medicine, as happiness, as the essence of the moment when you're beaten, when you hear checkmate, and can finally say, with a large voice, I trust you to kill me. An awkward comparison. This physical world has no two things alike. Every comparison is awkwardly rough. You can put a lion next to a man, but the placing is hazardous to both. Say the body is like this lamp. It has to have a wick and oil, sleep and food. If it doesn't get those, it will die, and it's always burning those up, trying to die. But where is the sun in this comparison? It rises and the lamp's light mixes with the day. Oneness, which is the reality, cannot be understood with lamp and sun images. The blurring of a plural into a unity is wrong. No image can describe what of our fathers and mothers, our grandfathers and grandmothers remains. Language does not touch the one who lives in each of us. Two kinds of intelligence. There are two kinds of intelligence. One acquired, as a child in school memorizes facts and concepts from books and from what the teacher says, collecting information from the traditional sciences as well as from the new sciences. With such intelligence you rise in the world. You get ranked ahead or behind others in regard to your competence in retaining information. You stroll with this intelligence in and out of fields of knowledge, getting always more marks on your preserving tablets. There's another kind of tablet, one already completed and preserved inside of you, a spring overflowing its spring box, a freshness in the center of the chest. This other intelligence does not turn yellow or stagnate. It's fluid, and it doesn't move from outside to inside through the conduits of plumbing learning. This second knowing is a fountainhead from within you moving out. Two ways of running. A certain man had a jealous wife and a very, very appealing maidservant. The wife was careful not to leave them alone, ever. For 6 years they were never left in a room together. But then one day, at the public bath, the wife suddenly remembered that she'd left her silver wash basin at home. "Please go get the basin," she told her maid. The girl jumped to the task because she knew that she would finally get to be alone with the master. She ran joyfully. She flew. And desire took them both so quickly that they didn't even latch the door. With great speed they joined each other. When their bodies blend in copulation, spirits also merge. Meanwhile, the wife back at the bathhouse washing her hair. "What have I done? I've sent the cotton wool on fire. I've put the ram in with the ewe." She washed the clay soap off her hair and ran, fixing her chander about her as she went. The maid ran for love. The wife ran out of fear and jealousy. There is a great difference. The mystic flies, moment to moment. The fearful ascetic drags along month to month. But also the length of a day to a lover may be 50,000 years. You can't understand this with your mind. You must burst open. Fear is nothing to a lover. A tiny piece of thread. Love is a quality of God. Fear is an attribute of those who think they serve God, but who are actually preoccupied with penis and vagina. You have read in the text where "they love him" blends with "he loves them." Those joining loves are both qualities of God. Fear is not. What characteristics do God and human beings have in common? What is the connection between what lives in time and what lives in eternity? If I kept talking about love, 100 new combinings would happen, and still I would not say the mystery. The fearful ascetic runs on foot along the surface. Lovers move like lightning and wind. No contest. Theologians mumble, rumble-dumble, necessity and free will, while lover and beloved pull themselves into each other. The worried wife reaches the door and opens it. The maid, disheveled, confused, flushed, unable to speak. The husband begins his 5 times prayer. The wife enters this agitated scene. As though experimenting with clothes, the husband holds up some flaps and edges. She sees his testicles and penis so wet, semen still dribbling out, spurts of jism and vaginal juices drenching the thighs of the maid. The wife slaps him on the side of the head. Is this the way a man prays, with his balls? Does your penis long for union like this? Is that why her legs are so covered with this stuff? These are good questions she's asking her ascetic husband. People who renounce desires often turn suddenly into hypocrites. The importance of gourd crafting. There was a maidservant who had cleverly trained a donkey to perform the services of a man. From a gourd, she had carved a flanged device to fit on the donkey's penis to keep him from going too far into her. She had fashioned it just to the point of her pleasure, and she greatly enjoyed the arrangement as often as she could. She thrived, but the donkey was getting a little thin and tired looking. The mistress began to investigate. One day she peeked through a crack in the door and saw the animal's marvelous member and the delight of the girl stretched under the donkey. She said nothing. Later she knocked on the door and called the maid out on an errand, a long and complicated errand. I won't go into details. The servant knew what was happening, though. My mistress, she thought to herself, you should not send away the expert. When you begin to work without full knowledge, you risk your life. Your shame keeps you from asking me about the gourd, but you must have that to join with this donkey. There's a trick you don't know. But the woman was too fascinated with her idea to consider any danger. She led the donkey in and closed the door, thinking, with no one around, I can shout in my pleasure. She was dizzy with anticipation, her vagina glowing and singing like a nightingale. She arranged the chair under the donkey, as she had seen the girl do. She raised her legs and pulled him into her. Her fire kindled more, and the donkey politely pushed, as she urged him to, pushed through and into her intestines, and without a word she died. The chair fell one way, and she the other. The room was smeared with blood. Reader, have you ever seen anyone martyred for a donkey? Remember what the Quran says about the torment of disgracing yourself. Don't sacrifice your life to your animal soul. If you die of what that leads you to do, you are just like this woman on the floor. She is an image of immoderation. Remember her, and keep your balance. The maidservant returns and says, Yes, you saw my pleasure, but you didn't see the gourd that put a limit on it. You opened your shop before a master taught you the craft. Bread making. There was a feast. The king was heartily in his cups. He saw a learned scholar walking by. Bring him in and give him some of my fine wine. Servants rushed out and brought the man to the king's table, but he was not receptive. I had rather drink poison. I have never tasted wine, and I never will. Take it away from me. He kept on with these loud refusals, disturbing the atmosphere of the feast. This is how it sometimes is at God's table. Someone who has heard about ecstatic love but never tasted it disrupts the banquet. If there were a secret passage from his ears to his throat, everything in him would change. Initiation would occur. As it is, he's all fire and no light, all husk and no kernel. The king gave orders. Cupbearer, do what you must. This is how your invisible guide acts. The chess champion across from you that always wins. He cuffed the scholar's head and said, "Taste!" And again! The cup was drained and the intellectual started singing and telling ridiculous jokes. He joined the garden, snapping his fingers and swaying. Soon, of course, he had to pee. He went out, and there, near the latrine, was a beautiful woman, one of the king's harem. His mouth hung open. He wanted her. Right then, he wanted her. And she was not unwilling. They fell to on the ground. You've seen a baker rolling dough? He kneads it gently at first, then more roughly. He pounds it on the board. It softly groans under his palms. Now he spreads it out and rolls it flat. Then he bunches it and rolls it all the way out again. Thin. Now he adds water and mixes it well. Now salt and a little more salt. Now he shapes it delicately to its final shape and slides it into the oven, which is already hot. You remember bread making. This is how your desire tangles with the desired one. And it's not just a metaphor for a man and a woman making love. Warriors in battle do this too. A great mutual embrace is always happening between the eternal and what dies, between essence and accident. The support has different rules in every case, but it's basically the same. And remember, the way you make love is the way God will be with you. So these two were lost in their sexual trance, and they did not care any more about feasting or wine. Their eyes were closed like perfectly matching calligraphy lines. The king went looking for the scholar, and when he saw them there coupled, commented, "Well, as it is said, a good king must serve his subjects from his own table." There is joy, a wine-like freedom that dissolves the mind and restores the spirit, and there is manly fortitude like the king's, a reasonableness that accepts the bewildered lostness. But meditate now on steadfastness and clarity, and let those be the wings that lift and soar through the celestial spheres. All right. This has gone on long enough, but I had this silly idea to read these song lyrics, like as if not singing them, though I may sing them a little, but mostly just read them. It's all been very good so far. Tell me a line. Make it easy for me. Open your arms. Dance with me until I feel all right. It's good in the dark. It's good in the dark. But into the lover's light, here comes another fight. So ring the alarm. Ring the alarm. Bar me and hold me and cling to my arm. Here it comes. Here it comes. And what you're asking me now, disastrous now, hoping and hoping, the feeling goes away. Never change, never change, never change, never change. Never change, never change, never change. This is why I fell in love. Never change, never change, never change, never change, never change, never change, never change. That's just who I fell in love with. in love. This is the time, the very best time, so give me a line and take me home. Take me over. But dashing the hopes and smashing the pride, the morning's got you on the ropes. And love is a murderer. Love is a murderer. But if she calls you tonight, everything is all right. Yeah, we know. And love is a curse shoved in a hearse. Love is an open book to a verse of your bad poetry. And this is coming from me. But I can change. I can change, I can change, I can change, I can change. If it helps you fall in love. So turn on the light. Make it easy for me. Feel the divide. Fumble in the kitchen until it's right. What an awful sight. But there's love in your eyes. Love in your eyes. Love in your eyes. But maybe that's just what your lover finds all night. But I can change, I can change, I can change, I can change. I can change, I can change, I can change if it helps you fall in love. And that's James Murphy of the LCD Sound System. I can change. So there we go. Thank you for indulging me, if any of you did, for me indulging myself. Keeping up with the 38. The lover, a mystic, an ascetic. Somewhere lost between Taoism and Buddhism and Sufism and musicism, poetism, the 21st century, YouTube and Facebook and nudity and indulgent servitude. See you tomorrow.